Recording is in progress. Today is January 12th. It is 5:44 p.m. Central Time. I am your host, Jordan West, the most popular instructor according to the feedback. Just kidding. We haven't reviewed them yet. I want to see what y'all said. Today, we're going to go over Flask. We've spent a lot of time on Django. We will spend some more time on Django still. But I think it's a good time to take a look at this micro framework. If nothing else, just to see what else is out there, to get yourself familiarized with another tool. And I feel like with what we already know about Django, this is going to translate over exceedingly quick to Flask, to a point that it might surprise you how much you see and you go, oh, okay, cool, that makes sense. And I'm not saying any of you should, you still need to do Django for the rest of the curriculum. But when you're doing your individual projects, if you feel like Django is super duper heavy, and you feel like you need to do really, finite changes and stuff, real tweaky stuff in the back end, Flask might be your tool. And worst case scenario, you've got a new hobby project toy to play with. So I've got this repo open. I'm going to keep it over here. I will share it with the class afterwards. But I'm just going to kind of step through this. This is kind of a lesson I prepared before for a different purpose, but I really think this is the time to kind of walk through with you guys. So I guess I'll get into character a little bit. I'm building a website called Squid Inc. It's a multi-million-dollar social media website for my dog named Squid. It keeps track of, I think, his toys and food. You all know it. No, I'm not really going to play that. I'm sorry. I don't want to be dumb. Anyways, this is how I built it. This is how you're going to repeat it. Like with Django Quick Start, there is a Quick Start for Flask. There's quite a few of them. Some are really good. I don't want to just work straight out of it exactly, because it jumps around a bit. So I'm going to kind of give some of my bullet points of it. We're just going to build a website super duper fast in all Flask and HTML. No CSS, no styling going on in this thing just yet, although it's extremely easy to do, just like Django. You throw it in a static folder. Let's get started. So much like Django, you need to create a virtual environment. Much like Django, you need to pip install things. What do I actually have in the requirements for this? Okay, so let's pip install Flask. With that, Flask, let's talk about just a little bit more. Super light version. I don't want to say version. It's like super light Django. And with that, think about everything Django has baked into it, and Flask, for the most part, does not. A big thing, and what we're installing right now, right here, is an ORM. And I've talked about this before. Django's got its own ORM, and I don't love it. Maybe some of you do. Maybe some of you thought it wasn't very Pythonic. Flask doesn't have one. Flask, you can pretty much write SQL directly into it as strings and run it like that. You're free to pick one. Very popular one is SQL Alchemy. Slightly less popular, kind of a cult following, is Pee-wee. I like Pee-wee. It's got a really good, what's the word? Sorry, syntax. And the creator is pretty cool. It's maintained well. It's pretty fast. It's extremely light. We're staying super duper light on everything today. Let's get that installed. I think that's all I need to truly install with this. Pee-wee might take just a second. Donezo. All right. So what do we need for a Flask application? Let's just create a file called app.py. And within it, let's paste this. Let's just pull this down just a little bit. So from Flask, import Flask makes sense. We're setting a variable of app. Set it to Flask with this dunder name. Do as I say. That probably should be spaced. Now, all in one spot, we've got both a URL and a view all right here. So what this is saying is, hey, in this app that you've called Flask, I should have double checked what this is doing. It's basically saying, hey, this is the named app. I believe it's just app.py. This is adjustable. For right now, we're not going to play with that. This is saying, hey, for the app route of nothing, just a regular local host, we're going to create a function. We're going to call it hello world. We can call it whatever we wanted. It doesn't matter. We know when it goes here, it triggers this. The only reason to name this is to maybe use it somewhere down the line, but it could just be like your view. And then return the words hello world. We've got a website. Let's prove it to you actually. And I think I just used the words Flask run. And we'll go to localhost 5000 here. Hey, look at that. Did you think it could be that easy? Website running right there, looks good. Obviously, we're going to add more to this, but look how fast we did that. Look how many files we have. We've got one, by the way, one file open. Why isn't it showing my file where I want to see it? Oh, here it is. In a virtual environment, of course. Very optional, but good for running your work. Yeah, that's fine. We'll just leave that alone. Actually, I do have some notes here. If you wanted to name the main file a different file, you could do that. Right now, when I run Flask run, it's looking for app.py. It's using an environment variable. If I wanted to call it anything but app.py, which is not very conventional, we would just need to set a environment variable of Flask app. So you do something like export Flask app. I'm down here in my terminal. Set it to whatever you wanted. If I named this file squid.py instead, I could do that. And then I could still use Flask run and it would still run it. Just in case you're not stuck to using app.py, it's just, that's what it uses. Again, Flask, very flexible in what it does. Writing a string to a page, not, that big a deal. A lot of things can do that, but we can do more. Much like Django, we can create templates here, and we will do that now. So templates, again, this is set with some variable. We could change it so that it points at something not called templates, but we'll leave it as templates now. Flask knows very few things, but one of the things it does know is templates is where I go look for. It's basically set to the root of that, so it goes and looks for HTML files there. Within there, let's create a home.html. And I've got some junk to put in there, some kind of basic HTML, nothing crazy, setting some header tags. We got a title of Squid Inc. Homepage of Squid Inc. Easy peasy. I think with a quick refresh there and get this out of the way. It's good. We're still running. It didn't change anything. It's an H1 tag. Oh wait, because we didn't put it in yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. So we've created this home.html to point towards it, not particularly complicated. We're going to bring in a few, well, actually just really one thing. We're going to bring in from Flask this render template. You can probably guess what that does. It renders a template, very similar to how Django does this. You just return render template. I think in Django it's just called render, and we give it a template, home.html. Again, I don't have to do templates / because Flask is smart enough to know that. And then this here at the end, optional, but I'm returning a 200 tag. I don't have to do that. It would default to 200 if we go there. Again, I can very easily just tell my endpoints, return this if you, all my renders are going to return, whatever I return from this function, I'm giving it something to return, and then whatever the next thing is the error code or the HTTP code. So I could set it to really whatever I wanted, and it would come back whatever I wanted. So we have a lot more easy control, easy peasy over that. Let's, I think I could just refresh this. No, I think I do have to restart it. There we go. Cool. Extremely simple, right? Any questions so far?
I have one specific to the environment variables.
Yes.
So let's say, in my case, I create an environment variable that changes the name of the app. And when I tried to run Flask, um, it tells me that it could not import the app name. Um, is there a way to go back and find the environment variables, whether in a folder somewhere or through the terminal?
Um, hmm, hmm, hmm. Hmm, hmm, hmm. I think we would have to run the shell to see what all environment variables it loads up. I'll get that answer for you, but the quick answer is it's in the docs, what environment variables it's looking for and how to adjust those. Um, I just know that uh, setting export flag, this ought to work. I don't want to, I should have tested this last minute, but I left a note rather. Using export is important because that's saying, hey, actually, I forget what exactly export does, but it's basically, hey, all shell actions after this, keep this terminal alive. This is going to stay around. This is not just for this command here. Flask app is squid.py. Assuming this was squid.py, then all Flask commands, so when you run Flask, anything else, it knows the app for all of my commands is now this. Um, I don't know at the top of my head how to look at environment variables for that. Maybe we could just play just a little bit. Flask help. Uh, Flask debug, Flask. Shell. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Hmm. Let's see.
So I think I did fix it by just rerunning export Flask app and changed the name. But I was just kind of interested in like kind of understanding that further, but that's probably like a very specific thing.
It's just I would have to we'd have to dig into the shell and look at every and just basically look at the list of environment variables. It wouldn't tell us what they do. It would just tell us what they are, but generally the docs are the best way to do that. Or if you're real hacky, you look down in the libs of the environment variables, or sorry, of the virtual environment, and then you look at Flask, and then you dig through all of this if you really wanted to know. Might be in config.py. We're getting too deep. I don't want to show you all that. Don't look how the sausage is made. Don't open up this virtual environment unless you're doing some weird stuff. But yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know a quick way to look at all those without digging into the docs, which is outside of the scope of what I want to do right this minute. But I'll
Yes,
answer
sir.
more
Thank you.
questions in more depth later.
Yes, sir.
Um, yeah. All right, cool. So let's add a second page and establish some navigation. You can probably guess how we're going to do this. Simple anchor tags, nothing crazy. Um, da, 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 So I want to create, I guess to show you more stuff that looks totally familiar. We can still set a base here. So within templates, we've got a base. Like you've seen before, this probably looks exactly like HTML we play with in Django. You could copy paste this into Django and it would run just fine. We've got a block content and block. We're going to update home to account for all that, right? Base is now going to be taking care of all of our head tags. Shouldn't change anything here. We still just get an H1 tag. We did now add a button. This is going to be the food detail button to go look at food details. and we'll mock that up real fast. So still within templates, let's create that. By the way, so I don't blow through this, I'm just building a button here. It's a text type button. It's going to have an anchor tag going here. It knows that is just localhost 5000, whatever's next. It's not going to append anything to there unless we specifically tell it to here or somewhere else. So this is just going to go to localhost/food detail. We could build the route first. We could build the view, we could build the template, or we could build the view. In Django, we've been building the view first, so let's go ahead and just do that, view and app or URL at the same time. So we go here. I want to create a new endpoint. No, don't do that. To save that. So super easy. We just continue here with this app.route. This is saying, hey, for this app here, I want to route. When you go to /food detail, we're just going to define a quick little function here. Return a template, food detail.html. Obviously, we're going to need to create that. Feeling kind of like Flask? Feeling familiar? You've never seen Flask before? Or sorry, not Flask. Feels like Django? Feels like Django? You've never done Flask before, but you can kind of hopefully see what's coming next each time. Quick little food detail, extends the base. This is the food detail page, nothing crazy. I'm going to throw an anchor tag in there that says go back to the home page. To go back to the home page, quick anchor tag that sends us right back to the root. Kill it, run it, reload, check it out. Built that fast. Home page, home of Squid, button, type text, go to food detail. Takes us to this URL, food detail. Notice we got a little title up here. That's nice. And back to the home page. Look at that. Bouncing back and forth, easy peasy, nothing crazy. No need to overcomplicate it. But we are going to overcomplicate it a little bit more because obviously we're just working with HTML. Let's get some models in here. How exactly did I do this? Yeah. So the way I chose to do this, and not the only way to do this, the way I chose to do it, again, I could leave models.py if I want to create a models.py, which that's what's coming up next. I could just create a models.py right here at this level. I want to organize just a little bit more than that because I'm going to have, I think, some seed data later. So within Flask app, I'm going to create a folder that I want to call data. This is not a keyword. This is just what I wanted to call it. That may not be the best word for it, but that's what I chose to do. Within data, we're going to create models.py. This is just getting it out of the way, just keeping everything fairly cleaned up. And this is where we're going to work with Peewee. We will be using SQLite for this, which I think SQLite, yeah, should be installed. So from Peewee, let's just import everything. I am going to be using pathlib, and I will tell you why. I think we've run into this with some of y'all's assignments. When you're building stuff sometimes, especially when you're routing to like data pages or seed files or any kind of like static information within your application, it's not always a great job to just say, oh yeah, up 2 levels over there. Sometimes you want to give it an exact path. So this is some Python that you may or may not understand. Effectively, I'm just saying, hey, wherever you invoked Python from, I don't care where, but within this application /data, please. So it doesn't matter if I invoke Flask from this level, 2 levels up. If I run it on a PC, sometimes can cause issues doing this. Giving it a absolute path somewhere, just kind of good coding practices. I know Hyder was struggling with this a little bit with some of y'all's tests. If you do stuff like this, it'll get you out of there. You probably didn't know, or maybe you did know that it caused a lot of pain, but it's not your fault. Also, I'm going to set a database again. Sorry, I'm just using the path here. And then I'm going to have squid.db. I don't have to create this. This is just going to build it for me. Using Peewee's syntax looks a little like Django's. I would say, but really the querying is why I really like Pee-wee, and we'll kind of see that. So create a class, call it food. I just make a model, no big deal. It's got a name and it's got a rating. So he's gonna rate food, right? Got a char field, got an integer field. I could put more in here. I don't need to. It defaults to, what it defaults to. I like to set this down here to make this stuff easier, but I'm going to say, hey, this database up here, this SQLite database set at this absolute path called squid.database. I want you to connect to it, and I want you to create a table right here. This is always going to create a table when I run this file, or it's going to try to. So all right, so that's there. All we need to do now is kind of plug it in. Again, Django handles some of the routing for us that we don't really have to think about too much. But actually still in Django, you have to tell it where things are. So we are in the main app.py file going to say, hey, go look in that data folder at models. I got something I need you to import. And that's just going to kind of run it. When it imports this data.models, it's going to run that file. I'll prove that now. Look at this. We got a database created here. You can't look at it, SQLite. Sorry. We can check it out, actually. I don't know if y'all are in the habit of doing this, but you can run the command SQLite 3 on a SQLite 3 database and give it commands while outside of the database. And actually, you can do this with Postgres too, I believe. You don't actually have to get into it each time and run shell commands. You can send it commands from the outside. So I'm going to run SQLite 3 on this database, and I'm just going to give it command .tables. And it responds with food, because that's the table I created. So it's there. I just proved that. It shows you a quick little development tool at the same time. Man, I left big, annoying notes. No one wants to read all that. Let's keep moving with our models. I want to add more models. I'll paste a lot of this. So let's add, again, this is kind of development style stuff I'm doing here. If I were to create a production level environment, I would need to change this file up a little bit. But while just building it out, it's totally fine. Every time I start my application, I want it to create a table, then drop a table, and then create this table. Oh, maybe I don't need that. Actually, I'm going to leave it this way because it's fine. But I'm rebuilding my models each and every time that I run this in a development environment. That's fine in a development environment. When you do that production, obviously you don't want to do that. You would just have create tables once in here. You would not have drop tables. If you want to get around stuff like this, you could set something like os.environ. I forget the exact command for that, but it's Python, and I can have it saying like if the environment variable is equal to dev, and then do this stuff. Otherwise, it would not be dropping these tables and trying to recreate them every time. I'll add that in the repo just so you can see it. Just kind of nice tools that are not obstructive to a production environment and allow it to be developed easily. And that's something you'll kind of really run into as you get to the end of your projects. And when you start kind of pipelining stuff, is how do I make a development environment that is safe without pushing out stuff that is not safe to production? This is one of the little things I like to do. I like to have, logical operators that when I'm in development environment, basically I'll have something that sets this Flask environment here to dev, and I can do whatever I want locally without worrying about pushing something potentially breaking. and not having to do a bunch of work on my side. If somebody pulls down my repo, I posted a big thing about this in Slack the other day, but if someone pulls down my repo, I'd like them to run one single command to get it set up in a development environment, set all these variables, run everything, and then they're good to go. I'll rant more about that later. Let's continue. I am going to seed some stuff here. All doing this within models.py. You could separate this into like a seed.py if you wanted to, and just bring it in. Set a quick variable, or sorry, set a quick function, or list, set them to dictionaries, and then I just iterate through it. So for food in this list here, I want you to create a food model, shove it in the database. So now we got some data to work with. Our development environment is going to build stuff out for us so we can see what it actually looks like real time. Anyways, I want to see this on the main page. So we're going to make a quick change to the home page here. I think all we're going to do to get foods in there, this is going to look again similar to Django. I'm going to set a variable pulling in food.select. This is how I get all. I think in Django, this would look something like food.objects.getAll, I think. This a little bit more, both a little bit more Pythonic and a little bit more like SQL, I would say. I think this looks a lot better. Yeah, looks a lot better and is a lot easier to deal with than, you know, I don't think anyone really likes that. So that's like the Django RM. Again, this is fine. It's a small thing. It's not like the reason why Peewee is superior. But I'm just saying, look how clean this is. This is pretty obvious what it's doing. If I wanted to get one, it would be something like get and just get the first one in the line. I won't dig too much into Peewee, but it's a really wonderful ORM to use. Takes no time to learn. And I want to send that to the file. So using Jinja, which we can use Jinja directly inside of our Flask, all we want to do is send it like this. I don't need to wrap it in any kind of, dictionary, stuff like that. That doesn't matter. It's just going to take the variable. It sees that that's a list. This is going to turn into a list of food. It's going to get all the foods from my database, shove them into foods variable as a model, and I can send it directly to the Jinja. Super duper easy to understand what's going on here. Even if you've never seen Flask before, you can kind of real quickly figure out what it's doing. Food must be that model there. Foods, it's selecting, it's getting all of them. I'm rendering it to a home template, setting a variable. Should that be called foods? Yes, it should. Looks good. Let's see what the homepage should look like to fix that, and then we'll re-render it. What did I add in here? All right, we'll just paste it. Nothing crazy. Extending our block content. Homepage. I added a H3 tag. This is the list, and I'm making an unordered list for food in foods. Easy peasy or Python. List food.name. Easy. Food.rating. Easy. That comes straight from our models. Don't forget, food has a name and a rating. Here we go. And then for each one of these, I'm giving it an anchor tag to food detail / food.id, which we will create shortly, but not yet. Let's see if this works. Ooh, look at that. Super duper easy. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't look super clean, but you can see what's going on. Here's a hamburger. It's a 10. Lettuce is a 9. Chimkin, 10. These are things that Squid eats. He loves this stuff. And we've got quick little edit buttons that are probably going to break because, yep, easy peasy. Not found URL. We're not returning anything. But you see, it does take us to food detail / 1. This one should take us to food detail / 3, because again, the anchor tag is just food detail / food.id. We got to build that. Backdap.py. What else do we want to do? Let's pull in a few other toys here. I brought in redirect, URL4, and request. All right, so main homepage, or sorry, main route, I want to use this to both display all of the list of foods. I would also like this to be an endpoint to create a new food. If I go to create a new food, I want to just fire a post request off to here. So I'm going to use this also as a post. So it's going to have a post and a get. To do that, if you wanted to, you would just need to do this. Set methods, meaning, hey, this endpoint allows gets. This one's the default. That's already there. I'm just doing it because you can see it, and posts. So all I've done is change this route. So instead of just returning something, it says, oh, hey, by the way, I can now receive post requests. Nothing too crazy there. I think that makes sense. We'll do post first. So let's kick all this down. And do some pretty obvious Python here. And else. I think that's right. I should just copy paste it. Anyway, so if we post here, it's going to look if the request.method, which is why I pulled in request, because I want to see the type of request that hits this. If it's a post, we're going to food.create. Real simple, looks right. This is going to invoke the method, or sorry, the model food. It's going to create it. It's going to pull request.form. So it's taking a form and looking at whatever the name value is, and then whatever the rating value is, setting those to name and rating, and then redirecting us, creating it. It's that easy. That's how you, from a form, would create a new model. Otherwise, just return us back, or just give us a get. I'm going to clean up this a little bit. I'm going to paste a lot here, but we'll talk about it. Okay, so food detail. Food detail needs an ID, which is what we were doing here. You click here and it gives you food detail / ID. So this will still receive gets and posts. One thing to talk about with HTML and being very simplistic with it, HTML really only knows what a get and a post is. We've got delete and put. Those are beyond basic HTML. So for Flask, if we're just interacting with HTML, we're just using templates, we're only going to send get and post requests and work with those to kind of make our edits, make our deletes. So for the detail page, again, we're getting ID right here as a parameter. All I have to do to use that within this function is plug it in just like that. So in I think Django, this looks something like this. It had to be like int.id or something like that. Here, we don't need to do that. We don't need to tell it what type it is. We can just put ID, saying, hey, whatever comes after food / detail, that's ID, unless there's something else. So food is going to do food.get, ID equal to ID. This is Pee-wee at work. It's going to look at the food model, use the .get method. It's going to look for an ID based off of whatever this ID is. If the request method is a get, makes sense. We'll just render the food detail template. The food is this food here. If it's a post, we are going to update it basically. So I know it says post. Think of this as a put, because we can't really send a put request from HTML. It's going to take that form and say, hey, this food here that I just went and got, just rewrite the name, rewrite the rating, save it, redirect us back to home. Not too complex. I also threw a delete in here as well. The delete makes sense. if you were to send a request to food detail /ID /delete, and you send a put request, it would go get that food, delete instance. This is how Peewee deletes an instance, and then just return you back. Very easy. No extra learning. It does what it looks like it does. I think that's called, I say it's called duck typing. I need to verify that it's actually called duck typing because I say that all the time. Never mind. Don't call it, don't quote me on that. All right. We built our routes for this. We've built our views for this. All we need to do is update the templates, and all of this will kind of be utilized. So in home, you want to add both the ability to create new foods. Actually, I think that's all we're doing. So everything else is still the same. We're still going to have our list of foods. All I'm doing now is creating a form. I'm not using some crazy Python form. I'm just using raw HTML forms, form action. It's going to, whatever you submit this form to, it's going to send it here, and it's going to be a post, meaning whatever form is submitted on your home is going to submit to this endpoint, which will be this post, and it should create a new food. Input for name and rating. And it's got a little placeholder here that's going to tell you, kind of help the user put that in there. Last thing we're going to do is the food detail, because we need to be able to edit and delete it, because we did create those URL endpoints. So instead of just showing the food and its rating, it is going to have a, basically it's going to display it in a form. If you submit the form, it'll edit it, or you can just delete it. This kind of works like, I'm trying to think of something that looks like this, but it kind of works a little bit like Jira. If you've ever worked in Jira, it's got everything displayed in an editable form to both view and make changes on the fly. See if everything works. All right, cool. Homepage. Got a list of foods. If I wanted to create a new food here, we would do something like, what have you eaten recently, Squivers? Oh, you got some steak. What was that? An 11. Submit. The reason it showed up immediately, I should, is because we refresh the page. A lot of times when you submit something that you gotta just kind of get in the habit of when you're working with HTML, just because you change something on the back end, unless you refresh the page or redirect, it looked like it happened immediately, but it didn't refresh it technically. It redirected back to the home page. That's why it seemed to populate immediately. So I can go in and edit any of these. It looks like a form, so you can edit it directly if you wanted to. You could say, we don't actually like that. That made our stomach hurt. Submit it, take us back. It's now a 5. No styling in here, of course. I didn't want to dig too deep into that. Let's see if delete works. Yep, delete. Shimkin's gone. Never look at that again. That's really all I want to show. There's some obvious, issues still that I would want to change. If I were to deploy this, I don't really want it seeding this each and every time. I would probably move a seed, like this seed file, out to a different file and only invoke it in a development environment. I would not be dropping these tables each and every time. I would actually just have that there because I wouldn't want to be blowing this data away. But this is a really good development environment. And when you are working on your projects, it's not the worst idea in the world to blast your database away and pull it back each time when you're just trying to figure out how things are going to be working. Don't be battling your database when there's not a need for it. That's some of my quick advice. What else did I want to talk about? Oh yeah, there's no validation at any step of this. So we could do that and say, oh wait, obviously it's going to put whatever I want. These placeholders don't actually make you do anything, but very easy to work with. If I did want to do some kind of validations on there, I could do it right here. I could say, hey, that food.name, if that wasn't a string or didn't meet some of these food requirements, just return them back to the home page and flash a message saying that's not a real food. Or if rating wasn't an integer between 1 and 10, you know, take them back to this page and say you need an integer 1 to 10, something like that. So you can do some real quick validation. I didn't want to get too deep into this. I just wanted to show you how quick Flask is to work with, and I like it because sometimes when you just want to build something, you don't want to have to create this monster project each and every single time. And even with that, I don't want you to think of Flask as a hobby tool. There are a lot of major websites built in Flask. You can make this as complicated and as large as you want to. You can add as many directories and loop different ways. At some point, eventually, it's like, we should have probably maybe just used Django, but some people don't want to. Sometimes you want to build custom solutions for your problems. And, as a hobby developer, or even when you're building your own stuff, maybe when you're submitting code to a company, I would say one disadvantage of Django is if you come to somewhere and you're showing off your project, like, I built this in Django, and they start going through the folders. What is this folder here? What's this file here? What's that for? Why did you set that? And you're like, that's how I do it in Django. I don't know. But here in Flask, there's not a single auto-generated anything in here. We just now created every single file here, and I feel like if I twisted a few of your ears, you could probably tell me what the file does, why it's there, and what these functions do. You wouldn't have to say, well, I got to go read the Django docs, or I got to read the Flask docs to figure this out, because you wrote it. It's letting Python do what Python wants to do. The only crazy thing really happening here is that Flask is looking for Flask commands, and it is hosting a server based off of these routes. Are there any questions? That is all I want to show. All right.